This Covert Code podcast is in partnership with Forbes Books.
Aloha, my name is Anna Covert, and on this episode of Authority as a Growth Strategy, a Forbes Books series presented by the Covert Code, the topic is demystifying the publishing process and accelerating your authority journey. My very special guest is Tyler LeBleu, a senior leader at Advantage Authority Publishing. Tyler has over 25 years of extensive experience in publishing, spanning from traditional publishing to independent press and online retail book publishing. So he handles everything from editorial to production, design, and even distribution. Today, we're going to be unlocking and uncovering what it really takes to write a book. And now with AI and different changes of what's going on in terms of speed, how really to pick the best publishing model, which I think was really exciting for me, just learning about writing a book and how many choices there are. So thanks for being here today, Tyler.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Anna.
So to start us off, we like to begin with just a little Cliff Notes version of the Tyler story. You know, you have a very impressive background. So how did you get into publishing and how did you get to the seat you're in right now?
Sure. So it really started when I was growing up. My mother was a librarian, so books have always been a really big part of my life from the very beginning. And when I finished college, I moved to New York and I got my degree in education. But when I moved to New York, I knew that I did not want to become a teacher. So looking at different industries, my mom actually suggested, have you ever thought about publishing? You're in the mecca of publishing there. So I started looking at publishing companies and I lucked out and got a job at Simon & Schuster. And that really started my publishing career. So I worked my way up through Simon & Schuster from the sales division into the marketing division. And then after about 10 years at Simon & Schuster, I moved over to the online retail. So I went to Audible and was there for a year, really learned how to communicate to customers, but also just from the retail perspective, how the industry worked. And then I moved to Austin, Texas, where I joined an independent, small independent publisher and was there for about 10 years. And that is where I learned the production process. So everything from editorial, design, printing, and then distribution. And then lucky enough, I ended up at Forbes Books Advantage and went into a leadership role here managing the team.
Wow, that's exciting. Librarian. Gosh, I used to love going to the library.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's still one of my favorite things to do. It just being encircled around the books and having everything at your fingertips that you could possibly want is really, for a book nerd, is really great.
Yeah, I haven't gone. That's one of the things I've been wanting to do is going, because that was part of where I picked Forbes, right? That I was going to be in every library, and I was really motivated by that, and to go in and just find my book. But I remember the feeling of the search of what books you were going to find and pulling them off the shelf, and that's really a lost art. So that's really, really a cool background to have.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So, I think maybe just to start us off, can you walk us through the different types of publishing that exist today, and really what makes each one pop?
Sure, absolutely. Well, the one that everyone knows is traditional publishing. So that is what you think it is, being published by Simon & Schuster, Random House, Penguin. And that's really where there is an acquisitions editor that buys the rights from the author. The publishing company does all of the work from editorial through from design to distribution, but it's all on their terms. The author does have a say in it, but ultimately it is the publisher's book, and they make the plan. They release it when they want to release it and go through that. those stages. The next is self-publishing. So I'm sure a lot of people have heard of that as well. So self-publishing is a complete do-it-yourself model. There's KDP, there's Ingram Spark, several companies out there that assist to a minimal level getting the author's book into a platform that they can release it to their audience. But the author is responsible for all the editorial work, all the design work, all the production work, and then getting it into the system for distribution. And then the happy medium is hybrid publishing or independent publishing. And with that model, you kind of get the best of both worlds. So you're getting established industry people working on your books. So editors who have been doing this for years and years and years, designers, world-class award-winning designers, and they are there to help you through that process. So making sure that your manuscript is edited in a professional way, that it is targeted to your audience in a most efficient and effective way. The design, they know what works for that genre. They have that background to design a cover that's striking, that's going to call it, bring attention to your messaging, to your audience. And then you also have a team of salespeople, distribution, that are out there selling your book into the market, placed through retail, through airports, all of those markets, and getting your book out there to your audience. So really looking at the author, what's the most important? Do you want someone to try to sell, an agent to sell into a traditional publishing and have that prestige, that vanity type publishing? Or do you want to do it completely on your own terms? Or do you want something that's in the middle? It really is, what are you trying to gain through this process?
Yeah, it's been a really good overview. And I think one thing that I learned is kind of the more traditional approach is really more for kind of fiction, right? Or like an autobiography or something where, it's not really a business. It's not very popular for business books, right? Is what I learned, at least. And so really then you're kind of between the hybrid model or the self-publishing model. And so I was, I'm really grateful that I started my journey off with Forbes Books for my first book. And then just last year, I did a self-published book for a niche industry, which was a solar coaster. And wow, I just have to say that it was a whole new world, and you don't realize, sure, it might seem like there's going to be savings there, but it was a lot of stress, I mean, for me, after using a team like your own, right? And the printing and just I think it's a big difference of even the indicias on every single distribution method, that you have to have a different barcode on Amazon book and a Kindle book and an auto. I mean, you don't realize that there's so much to it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Until you start doing it on your own, you really don't know how much of an effort it's really, and how much time it's going to take you to go through those steps. And especially if you've been published on the traditional model, or you've been with a hybrid publisher, because you weren't really part of those details because the team was doing that for you. And then when you get into the self-publishing, it is really, you do every single piece yourself.
Yeah, it was a lot. So I definitely think it's really, thinking about the ROI, depending on who we're targeting or who's doing the book, your time is worth something. You're a business leader, probably, hopefully, or you want to be, this is your authority blueprint. Right. And, what is that effort? And is it, it's really important to pick the right partner. So, what do you think, starting with a common hurdle, a lot of people say, or successful leaders say, that they've always wanted to write a book someday. Right. And, what have you seen as kind of the different paths of, how do people make it from a fantasy to something that's legitimate? And what is like a non-negotiable next step for someone who really wants to be intentional about creating a manuscript?
Yeah. So with the fantasy, you see yourself already holding a hardcover paperback book in your hands, and really
absolutely, you snuggle with the book.
and the reality is, you have to think about exactly like how are you going to get there? What are the steps that you're going to do to get there? And the first thing that really you need to focus on is, what is my message? What am I trying to solve? What audience am I trying to target? And what's their pain point? And how am I going to help them solve that problem? So really, looking at that, it's clarity and commitment. Those are the two main things I would say, that really is the reality of getting your ideas onto the page and out to your audience. So clarity meaning, just what I said, like defining who your audience is, what's the pain point, and how are you going to help solve that problem. The commitment is, making sure that you look at writing as part of your job and not a hobby. So up front, I would suggest scheduling. If you're going to use a ghostwriter, I would go ahead and schedule those sessions up front, 10 to 15 sessions. They're in your calendar. You look at them as you would look at like a board meeting.
Yes.
You don't move them and you stay committed to that. And then also staying committed, if you're writing it on your own, setting up those writing sessions, those blocks of time, and treating it the same way. Those are non-negotiable, and sticking with it. And if you have your message, you have your audience, you have a clear path, and then you also have that commitment where you've putting yourself into these writing sessions, it's much easier to stay on task and get it done.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And I can attest to that. I wrote my own book, but one thing that I also recommend, now that I've writing two books, is to just write something, and for me, I realized that I needed a much more time. Like I did both of the books, with pockets of like a week where I was like on vacation, and I didn't have the distraction, because like the first 15 minutes of anything you write is kind of garbage. You're like, but just getting over yourself and realizing that the more you can just write it all on the page and just keep going, don't stop, don't get distracted, because you're going to have this great editing team. Right. And they're going to come through and they're going to, take off the things that you don't need. So just write it all down and just keep going. I think that's really good advice, and just treat it like it's a regular meeting and write whatever you can write and just keep going and don't worry too much about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I would also suggest, also starting with some kind of blueprint. So if it's a one pager, that's what you want. Or what I would suggest is, yes, start with the blueprint, start with the one page, and then take that to the next level and really create a detailed, if you're working with a book coach or a ghostwriter, working on a detailed, or even yourself, a detailed book plan that maps out everything you want to say, how you're going to say it, even bringing up like, oh yes, this case study, this part of my life, this makes sense at this, to prove this point, really defining those, and then taking that plan and filling in the blanks along the way will really help drive the commitment, the clarity through the whole process. But again, yeah, I definitely would recommend just whatever it is, just put it on the page and let the editors decipher how they're going to make that work.
Yeah. For me, it's always been easier to write things chronologically, even if you don't necessarily do them that way. But like when I was telling the story of how I got to where I was, and then of course when I got to when I first met with Forbes, and I was still writing. I was like at 57,000 words, and they're like, "You're done," And that's another thing that I think is interesting with the business. Like, stop writing. I'm like, but I'm not. They're like, "You're done for sure." But there's a certain amount of pages that's recommended for a business book. Tell me a little bit about that and where this data came from, because I think it's really interesting.
Yeah. So for, your average business book, you're looking at 45 to 50,000 words is like a sweet spot. That's really where you want to hit. And it is enough to make sure that you are covering what you want to cover in an effective way, but you're not going overboard. You're not losing the audience by giving them too much fluff or too much things that are just not relevant, to the overall message message. Again, that's why I would suggest making sure that you have that book plan really to help guide you through that, so you are keeping yourself in check. You don't want to put everything that you've ever learned ever into the book. You really want to stay focused. And I would say at 45 to 50,000 words, you're really in that spot where you're giving enough information, but you're not going overboard.
Yeah, and I thought the same thing. And then also, even when you read books, you realize that, especially a business leader, you want to be done with it. I mean, not like in that way, but you want to feel the achievement. You want to get that little microburst of what you were learning and feel like it's enough so that you can really consume it and then move on to the next book. Like the longer they are, the more daunting they become, right? And then you may not get through it. So I think, I also did an article series on Forbes after I published. So that's another place where, like I wrote everything down, and later me and the editor were like, okay, well, this could be a great article. Right. So it's not like you're going to lose that content if you've written it. It's just how do you repurpose it, and how do you really get those bites out of it that are the most yummy for the consumer?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a very good point. And one of the reasons, get it all on the page, because you never know what idea may not make it into the book, but it could be a series of articles, a series of blogs, a series of podcasts, whatever. You can still use that content.
Yeah. So I think that's a great place to pivot. So, what everyone's talking about now is AI, right? Is fundamentally changing content creation as we know it. And so
Yes.
for CEOs and leaders that you work with, what do you think how is the rise of these tools really changing the author's experience?
Yeah, so I would say in several ways. One is you see a lot more of leaders that don't think that they have the time to sit down and write a full book. So you're seeing a lot more of completely AI written manuscripts being submitted, where you, as a professional in the publishing world, it's very easy for us to detect
Yeah.
this was completely written by AI. And one of those reasons is there's no real personal stories or situations that the author has brought into the content. It's just very vanilla. There's not much experience to it. It's just facts. It's just, in this case, do this. And really with AI, you want to look at it as a tool, not as a replacement of you.
Right.
It's not a ghostwriter. It's really, you should be looking at it as a tool to do research, a tool to create blueprints, to create plans, and then you kind of shape it and fill it out. But you want to look at AI as a complete tool, but you know that you're going to put the human edge to everything. So you're going to be the one who's tying your story in, your experience. That's really what your audience wants. They just don't want a book on that subject. They can get that from, a vast amount of material that's out there, magazine articles, whatever the case may be, other authors, other books. But what is unique for you to build your authority is your experience, your knowledge. And that's what you want to make sure that even if you're using AI as a tool, that you're bringing to the manuscript, you're bringing to the process.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And then, it's so easy to detect too, it's like, it isn't this, it's that, it's like a common one. It's not, and then you're like, oh, wow. And then how many of those can you have in there? But I think also when you're thinking about building your authority, and this is what our series is about, right? And the need for a leader to really be able to stand out with all this cloudiness, right, in the market.
Right.
You're using this book as leverage to get that next client, to get the speaking engagement, to create the legacy. And if it doesn't sound like you when you talk, and that's what you're going to get if you get a fully AI experience, right? It's not going to match. And I think that's one thing that people are really going to be very sensitive to now, is like the feeling of the mismatch. And we're getting better and better at that, sniffing it out.
Yeah. I would say, even today, the reading audience, we have experienced enough of AI that people are getting very savvy to, oh, this is completely written by AI, and that is only going to grow from here on out. People everywhere are going to really understand the difference between someone who's sharing their experience, their true mess, their pitfalls, their accomplishments versus an AI that's just going to stick to what the internet, what has been fed to them. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then I read a really interesting stat the other day. It was something from Amazon saying that they were going, because of how many AI books were being submitted, that they're actually limiting an author. So I think it was 3 titles a day that they could self-publish.
Oh, wow.
And I was like horrified. I mean, and even the thought of publishing 3 things a day,
Right.
was outrageous to think about. And and then a lot of people I know are asking, well, how can that be? And then it's about print on demand. Can you tell us a little bit about how print on demand works?
Sure, absolutely. So the way that print on demand is used is you create the manuscript and you can put it into a platform like KDP, like Lightning Source, Ingram Spark. You can put it into those systems. And what happens is that you can either choose to use their layout templates or their cover templates, and they can help you create those, or you can do those on your own through, if you have a child that is in graphic design, or a little bit about graphic design, and you create those things, you can use that and upload it into these systems. And essentially what happens is that they become virtual inventory. So they're sitting in these systems, and when a customer orders the book, that is when the book is printed and shipped out to that consumer. So there is no inventory that's laying in a warehouse. The Amazon distribution centers don't have that inventory where they're immediately shipping it out as soon as somebody orders it. It is being printed and then shipped to the end consumer.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think it's great just being an environmentalist, like that we don't have to have like boxes of books everywhere, right? Or if you want to update the content, you can without it being too, cumbersome. Oh, I have 1,000 books sitting in my garage, like I do. Not that I love my books in my garage, so I give them away, of course. But so I think that really what I'm hearing is that there's this whole change now. It's like almost like a democratization of publishing and how people can use it. So, what do you think? How should leaders now? I think one part of this could be that they're thinking, oh, if everyone's doing it, how important is it? Like, is it really that something that's going to drive authority? And or is it just that now it's becoming a way to empower leaders to maybe pursue other ways that before they couldn't because of how limited publishing was? Like, what do you think is like the healthy medium and how people should be thinking about this tool?
Yeah, absolutely. So really, looking at, okay, what is your message? So you look at how you want to be published. So do you want that traditional big publisher where you're going through, 15 to 24 months of a timeline to be published? Or is your topic relevant now? So if it's relevant now, you want to look at, okay, I want to be out in the least amount of time, and self-publishing, hybrid publishing through this POD process, you can be published from, 8 to 9 months, sometimes even faster, depending on how much of the manuscript has been written, before you start this process. And that is giving you, as the author, the opportunity to be sharing your experience, your authority, as that topic is relevant in the world at this time. So
Right.
It's really looking at, what is my message? If it's something that you think is evergreen, maybe traditional publishing or even hybrid publishing is the way that you want to go. And you're not too concerned about being out there. You want it done right. You want it done high quality. You want your books to be printed the traditional way through an offset printer, and you want it to have all the bells and whistles. Maybe that makes sense for you. if you're an author that really, I want to gain my authority quickly and I want to establish myself now in this subject because that's what's being discussed, then maybe POD is the way. Self-publishing POD, hybrid publishing POD is the way that you go.
Yeah. What do you think are some common pitfalls to, ask, someone should be asking themselves right now to pick the right partner?
Yeah, so really looking at, okay, what are your end goals? So, do you want that vanity prestige, like the traditional publisher? Do you want a hybrid or independent publisher that you're getting that professional editorial, you're getting that professional design experience like you would with a traditional publisher and distribution with that? And then you also look at, okay, do I want to do this on my own? Do I want to try to save money and I can put in the time to do it myself? So I would say, one of the pitfalls is those who think they do have the time, but they want to save that money to not do the hybrid publishing or even on the traditional side, putting in the effort to try to get an agent and then going through that process. They want to do it themselves. They find out it takes a lot more effort. It takes a lot more time than you think it does. So you want to judge, okay, what do I want out of this? And I would say, in a lot of cases, especially if you're not like a celebrity CEO, if you aren't somebody that has a massive following already, traditional publishing is going to be a hard place for you to get into because that business world, like you brought up earlier, traditional is very much geared towards memoir, fiction, narrative. It's not geared towards the business world. They focus on, not that they don't do business books, they do, but they focus on those that already have that massive,
like Elon Musk or something. I mean, like someone
Absolutely.
that's like, it's kind of like, Steve Jobs, those kinds of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they want to make sure that their investment, they're going to get the most out of that. And to get the most out of that, you already have to have the authority. You already have to have the platform. And if you're trying to build that, most authors, business leaders see the value in hybrid and independent publishing. A, they know they don't have the time to do it. And B, they want the professional editorial. They want the professional design. They want the distribution into the retail. So things that you have to look at when you're looking at a hybrid publisher is, because they're, not all equal. You want to do your due diligence. You want to look at rights, like who's going to own the rights? Are you going to keep the rights as the business leader, the author, or are they keeping the rights? And most hybrid publishers that are credible are, you're going, as the author, you're going to keep the rights. And what that does for you is that opens the door that you can use that content in different ways, through podcasts, through writing articles, through courses, whatever, speaking engagements, whatever you want to do with that content. And you can do that without getting into permission issues, legal issues, like you own the rights there. Other pieces that you want to look at is retail visibility. So is this hybrid publisher just making the book available through POD, or are they actually selling it in through a sales channel into the brick and mortar, into the airports, into the libraries, those markets, special markets? And really you want to look at that as what are my goals? Is my goal to get it out fast, or is my goal to really set myself up as a credible source on this subject matter? And airports is a big thing.
I was so excited when I saw my book at the airport, and I had people, clients and other partners send me pictures of my book.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was like just
Absolutely.
a wonderful experience. And then, you're on the special shelf with other Forbes authors. And I think also part of what I appreciated, and I know the authority, advantage authority, you have lots of different imprints, but, you started that social media platform, and that has been a great asset to be, introduced to other like-minded professionals, right, and authors. So who's in your community when you pick this partner? Who is going to be the other authors that are also involved, and like what kind of access you're going to have to them? Because you're trying to become a thought leader. That means being able to communicate with others like yourself. And who else is I think that's a good recommendation, is who else has been published by this person or this
Yes.
company that you respect, that you believe. Do you feel like you're the same type of person or not? And then that should be a good guiding light for you, of, is it the right partner?
Absolutely. The very valid point. What is the community that they support within their own authorship? And you want to take those steps of, okay, let me go into the bookstore, let me go to Amazon, let me order books from this publisher, and really holding those books, see if it's of quality that you would give it to your network, give to a CEO that you're trying to get a blurb from, or whatever the case may be. And if you receive a product and you wouldn't give it to anyone, that may not be the right publisher for you. So you want to see what kind of product that they're putting out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll even say from firsthand experience, I've seen books that have that's not centered, you can tell, right? And then with my book, actually just the other day, my daughter was looking at it and she's like, when you take the dust jacket off, like how beautiful it is. It's like all shiny and amazing. It looks like
Absolutely.
CIA style, right? Without the dust jacket. But when I was self-publishing, even with all of our rounds of editing, I still found some, inconsistencies in the book, right?
Sure.
And it's like heart-wrenching when you spend all this time and effort and then you're here at a conference. And, so I think you really have to weigh all your options and then think about what that credibility looks like. If you're taking this time to publish a book, how is it going to be used as a tool to increase your online credibility? If someone looks you up, is that book going to be even served as something that it's connected to that author? A lot of times it's not. I mean, we see that. Someone's like, oh, I self-published, and you look them up and you don't see anything about their book popping up.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. So it's a very valid point. One of the benefits of hybrid publishing that you want to look into is, what is the book promotion that they offer? Are they helping you get that visibility within Amazon, within other retailers? What are they doing to help support you as the author, you as the authority leader, and really driving that book up to the top of the search results? You absolutely, if you're spending all this time and all this money to write a book and put it out there, you want it to be first on the list. You want it to be someone finding your book easily, without effort. And it is really hard to do that on your own through self-publishing.
Yeah, and get those reviews on Goodreads and other different types of distribution networks. Absolutely. So, what about, let's talk a little bit about the process of ghostwriting. And I didn't do ghostwriting, but how do you match an author, or if a leader's listening to this and they're thinking, okay, well, that seems like a great way to go. How do you match the right author with the right ghostwriter? What's that process look like?
Right, absolutely. So at Advantage, we have a team, a ghostwriting team that we work with. Obviously, a lot of freelance ghostwriters. We have about 200.
Wow.
That are on our bench, and essentially, our ghostwriting team will read through a book plan, a manuscript review, anything that was done as during the prospect, sales process. They read through all of that material and get a sense of, okay, who on our bench makes the most sense for this content. And then from there, they'll reach out to those people to see, okay, who's interested in meeting this author and potentially working with this author. So we're typically able to narrow it down, to around 4 to 5 ghostwriters that we think are a good fit. And then it's getting them in front of the author and the author going through and interviewing them. Because with a ghostwriter, you want to make sure not only can they have the chops to write the content, but you want to have a connection with them. You're going to get very close with them, very intimate with them. They're going to hear a lot about your life, a lot about your what you're bringing to the table, and it may not all be good. And you want them to be able to take that information and put you in the best light and show that not everything is perfect, but that it's done in a way that is going to resonate with your audience. And really going through those interview processes is the key point. You as the author want to make sure that you have, that you can speak with them really well, that you feel like they're committed to the project. And then also, can they actually write? Can they do this for me?
Right. You like the style of their writing and
absolutely.
Yeah. And does it match? And does it really feel like it's an extension of you? I think what percentage of your authors would you say choose that route versus writing their own book?
Yeah, for us, it is, it's really a lot of our authors, because of where, their work schedules and things that they're doing. I would say that most of our authors do choose to do ghostwriting. Now, some of them, when they get into it and they think that they've matched with a ghostwriter, they may choose, you know what, actually, I'm gonna do this on my own. And that absolutely is an option that they can pivot and go into, okay, I'm going to write this on my own now. But I would say around 80% of our authors choose to go the ghostwriting route.
Wow. That's a lot. That's higher than I expected it to be. Yeah. Well, I appreciated, it was, and I like just not everyone likes to write, right? I mean, I like writing, and was one of the things when I'm like touching the keyboard, I have a whole nother experience with my brain than I do when I'm speaking to someone.
Sure.
And so it's like, okay, well, if you can, what is that process and what are you really after? Is important. So what would you think, and I know you talked a little bit about commitment and clarity and credibility, if you had one kind of core lesson or a piece of advice, for an author of what to pick in terms of practical action, what should they do to make their project a success?
Yeah, so I would say, clarity is what fuels commitment. So again, I would go back to making sure at the very beginning, the first thing that you are doing is creating essentially, this book is going to help who? So your audience. What are they going to solve? What's the pain point? What are you helping them solve? What are you bringing to the table that's going to help them solve that? And then at the end of it, what's the result that they're going to get out of it? And it's going to help them reach what? So you want to define those. That's the first step that I would take. Then I would take that message, build a blueprint around that, and then take that blueprint and really create a detailed outline, a detailed plan. When you do all of those steps, you're investing that time, that commitment into that. It's a much easier road to start working on a manuscript and kind of filling in the blanks. And then I would also say to keep that commitment, you don't want to do this in a bubble, just you in your office. You want to tell your network that you're doing it. You want to tell your friends that you're doing it, your family, because when you tell those people, you've put it out there. You've basically said you're doing this, and that will help you stay committed through the process.
Absolutely. That's something that I appreciated about having my book coach, because then I did write it, but then I had to rewrite the book. So I wrote a book and then I had to rewrite the book, and I think I've done that as well with my second book. I wrote it twice and then rewrote it again myself. Right. Yeah. So it's just, you have to be willing to commit to that. But knowing that, she was writing me every week and kind of like, oh, where's the next chapter? And really keeping the pressure on, because I think it's easy. You're right. It's easy to get distracted, and it's a lot of work, and it's always a lot of work, and it's never not going to be a lot of work. And that's when making that blueprint, I think, is a really good idea, because you can say, is this book material, or is my story better served in like a LinkedIn article series? Or, do I have enough meat in this game to really make it worth the time for myself to write and then even for someone else to read? Or is maybe I can boil it down to something that's more consumable and easier.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And you do bring up a valid point with even if you're choosing to write your own book, always having a coach is the way to go.
Yeah.
Like you do everything else in the world, you want to have that coach that's helping you, encouraging you along the way. It is very difficult to do it on your own and stay committed through the entire process. And that coach will help you stay accountable, stay focused, and not only, and just help you think about things from your audience's perspective of, it may make sense to you, but as a reader, is it going to make sense? They don't know all the details that you know. So having that coach really is essential, I think, in staying committed through the end.
Absolutely. I like really love my coach was Heather Wagner, who I'm not sure if you know her, but she also did a podcast with me, and I just loved how thoughtful she was, being like, oh, this is great, but these you could tell which part she really liked. She's like, this part is like amazing, and then you're like, oh, well, the rest of it might not be that good. Okay, I guess I need to rewrite all this then. But no, I think you're right. It's great. You can really form that relationship. And you look forward to, at least I look forward to, like, sharing this stuff with her, and even doing the blogs. I'd write something, and then you start to realize that you don't need to be perfect, because you have this coach, and they're also going to be helping you edit it, and they know your voice so well that when it comes back to you at the very end, when I was doing those articles, I would write an article and send it to her, and it'd come back, and it's still my article, but it was like what I wanted to say. She just reshuffled it, and I was like, oh wow, like this is exactly what I was trying to say, and in the better, shorter version of it,
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one of the things that is really essential for authors to know, that your editor is not there just to make sure that it reads correctly. Your editor is there looking at it from the end reader's side, and they look at it as, okay, does this make sense? Could it be phrased in a different way that more of that readership, that end audience can understand, connect the dots? And they look at it. They're not as close to that process, to that content as the author. So they come from it from a different perspective. And really, when they're giving edits, they're really saying to you, as the author, this could be done in a different way for your end audience. They're not coming at from, I'm just critiquing what you've written, or this needs to be done better. It's really what they keep in mind is, how is this going to be at the end, and how is someone going to digest this?
Right. And then also to protect you, like, maybe you said something in a way that doesn't mean it doesn't seem like it could be disruptive to you, but someone else who's reading it might take it in the wrong way. Right.
Exactly.
And you want to be, hypersensitive to that, because you don't want to alienate someone for some small reason that you couldn't see past it with your own eyes, right? And that's something that I think was really important when we talked about AI. And I know a lot of people say, oh, well, AI can just edit something for me. Well, sure, but it's just going to be using punctuation. It's not doing this. It's not seeing the whole picture. And you can be sure of this, because if you ask AI, like, take something you've written, put in AI, ask it to edit it. Then say, well, what about this? right? What is this going to be offensive to someone who maybe is Republican or Democrat or whatever it might be? And it'll be like, oh, you're absolutely right. It always wants to agree with you, right?
Absolutely.
You are so 100% right. You feel so good about yourself. Here's the better version. Well, is this too sensitive? Oh, and so it's always going to be telling you that you're correct. And that's when you know that it can't be a critical thinker for you.
Exactly. Yeah. Very good point in the sense that, yes, AI, you can use it as a tool to edit, but it is always going to tell you in the way that you have written it that you are correct, that you're doing this the right way. And it is not going to look at it from a critical eye. And that is why you absolutely need a professional editor, because they are going to come from, from a standpoint of, if they think it's great, they're going to tell you it's great. If they think that it can be better, they're going to tell you it can be better.
Yeah, they'll like a little snoot, like a little yawn, like emoji, like, no, I'm kidding. That would be pretty funny, though. So for those people who, when they want to do this blueprint, so, there's going to be information within this podcast down here at the bottom, but also on my website, the Covert Code /Forbes Books. People can start their journey. They're going to be able to, connect with you and start this blueprint process. Now, for someone who has not written anything yet, is it too soon to start a blueprint? And you can walk them through that? Or do they have to, is there something that is going to be required, for everyone at every different phase of this journey?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, no, if you have an idea or you think that you have a book or a message that will help build your authority, but also it's solving a problem that you were seeing in your industry, I would say that absolutely bring that idea, bring anything that you have, transcripts from recorded meetings with clients, whatever material that you can bring that supports your messaging, that can be used, and even interviews with a good book planner, they're going to be able to draw that out of you. So I would say you absolutely do not need to come with anything written down. And we have authors that do that. We have authors that, we think that they have a great idea. We've seen them speaking, or we've seen, things that they're talking about on LinkedIn or through other, Forbes.com, whatever. We'll reach out to them and say, we think you have a book in you. And we bring them in and we show them this is how it could come together. So I would say you absolutely do not need to have anything written down. You don't even need to have an outline. Now, obviously, if you do have a manuscript and you do have, or even if you have an outline that's going to speed up the process because it's there. But it is not a necessity.
Actually, it's a great place to pivot, because on our next episode, the last one in the series, I'll be sitting down with Terry Staton, and we're talking about how to start with the end in mind. And so I think that's like a great place to be. It's like, what do you want from this book, right? What is the end goal? And then the team will help you figure out the strategy and the visibility and the market relevancy, right? On how to proceed.
Absolutely. And Terry is a master at it. So you guys are going to have a treat there.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for being here. If someone wants to get a hold of you, how can they find you and chat more?
Yeah, absolutely. So if anyone wants to reach out to me directly, they can find me on our website, and just reaching out to our generic number, they'll find me as well.
Great. Well, thanks so much for being here, Tyler. And please join me on the next episode of this special series to commemorate the Year of Authority. And I will see you in the pixels. Aloha. What an incredible third episode. Tyler showed us that authority doesn't happen by accident. It's built through execution, confidence, clarity, and the right publishing path. But before any of that even matters, there's a deeper question here at play that many leaders rarely ask. What are we building authority for? In our final episode of Authority as a Growth Strategy, a special Forbes Books series presented by the Covert Code, the topic is starting with the end in mind, designing your authority journey. My very special guest is Terry Staton, and we unpack how building authority has to be intentional, and how leaders who don't start with the end in mind risk building influence without impact. You are not going to want to miss this episode. I can't wait to see you there. Aloha.